The story begins with our hero saying that different genres of music represent their own kind of life. And different kinds of life may have a unique rhythm, but eventually they all become silent, and silence means hell. The main character concluded by saying that in the end, all these melodies mean absolutely nothing to him. Our hero introduced himself as Lola, and he was 18 years old. As a child, he often told people that his life was like an energetic musical orchestra. He also added that as he grew older, such topics of conversation came up less often, because you don't choose life. Suddenly our hero wondered if a carefree life full of choices isn't great. Suddenly the teacher started shouting at Lola to wake up. The teacher also asked Lola to say the answer to the problem. Lola replied that the answer was 1280, and added that his question was not entirely accurate. Lola wanted to continue answering, but he was interrupted by the teacher, who said that he could sit down because his answer was correct. His deskmate praised him that even when he was dozing, he could cope with any task. Lola replied that if it were possible to sleep like all normal people, he would not doze off in class. Later, classes ended, and Lola asked Xiao Jizi if the meeting place had been set. His deskmate asked Lola if he would go to the class meeting again. Lola replied that he was reluctant, and the girl asked if he was stuck with work again. Lola replied that he had no work today, he had some important things to do. Later, on a rainy evening, Lola told Mr. Kin that 100,000 in cash was ready. Lola was asked what he had to do with Luoyan. The guy replied that he was his uncle, and if there were no problems with money, then he said goodbye. The bad guys asked him who gave him permission to go. They also added that here is only the money that he borrowed from them, but where's the other 2 million for interest? Lola asked them if they were joking about 2 million. The bad guy asked him if they looked like clowns. Lola replied that he knew nothing about it, and if they wanted, he would ask his uncle about it. The bad guy said that neither his uncle nor he had any money anyway, so he suggested another payment method. The bad guy doubted that Lola could not be sold for a tidy sum. But the bad guy continued that if you take the organs of the eye, bones, and meat, you can make a lot of money. The bad guy also added that Lola is the interest payment. While running away from the bad guys, Lola shouted that he would not give them anything. While running away, he noticed that another bandit was standing in front of him. The bandit cut Lola's legs with one precise blow. The guy fell to the floor because he lost his legs. The bad guy told them to be careful not to damage his insides. Lola begged for Mr. Kin to let him go. One of them praised Lola, because even though he lost his legs, his desire to live still remained. Lola started talking about how he didn't do anything wrong. He also added that he does not want to leave this world. Lola continued to stretch out his hand towards the light that was at the end of the tunnel. Unexpectedly, the guy who attacked Lola raised his hand to strike again. This time, the guy cut off Lola's hands with his blade. After some time, the immobilized Lola lay near the wall. The bad guys got angry because the guy apparently lost too much blood. Someone on TV was told that there was another missing body incident. They also said on TV that the supposedly missing body was cut up with an axe. Wu Yang also asked why Mr. Kin still hasn't called, since a lot of time has passed since Lola left. Uncle also asked if Lola managed to escape. After calling the phone, the man also asked why no one was answering the phone. Suddenly the doorbell rang. Wu Yang asked why someone came to him so late at night. Wu Yang also said that he was on his way, and there was no need to knock. Wu Yan opened the door, and at his threshold, and noticed Lola. Lola replied to his uncle that he was now home. Previously, Lola woke up in a dark place and asked if he was alive and what kind of place it was. Lola also added that he remembers exactly how his hands were cut off. He also continued that the only places he visited in his life were school, work, and that small apartment. I asked you about how it ended in such a wretched place. Suddenly the guy got angry and shouted sharply. Columns suddenly began to break in the place where Lola was sitting. Lola remembered how the bad guy used to insult the guy, that he cut off his limbs, but even then managed to destroy The bad guy also added that apparently now only his meat will be sold. Suddenly Lola's limbs attacked the bad guy. Lola cut everyone down one by one, and said that he was not dead. Lo Yan was surprised by Lola's return, and asked if he gave them the money. Lola replied that according to them, that amount could only cover borrowed money, not interest. The uncle replied that he simply offered his nephew as a deposit, and when he won a sufficient amount, he would immediately return the demands. Lola reassured his uncle that in the future no one will threaten him anymore, because they are no more. Lo Yang asked for forgiveness, and took all the blame on himself, but asked not to destroy him. Lola said that thus, he was now resurrected, and it felt as if the events of the past hour were a dream. Lola had no idea what changes had happened to his body. Suddenly Lola's hands began to shake violently. Lola, without realizing it, cut off his fingers. But it was not blood that came from the fingers, but the threads that connected them to the body. Lola thought to himself that without any doubt this is a superpower. Lola also added that it was very painful. And then Lola drank a lot of alcohol, and said it was delicious. The guy said that now he understands why his uncle drank so much alcohol, because it has an incomparable taste. Lola also added that there are so many things in the world that he has not yet tried. And all his days were devoted to tedious part-time work. And after coming home, I only had the strength to fall into bed and sleep until the next morning. And things like getting a girlfriend were out of the question. Lola cried and said that he even tried beer only at the age of 17. Lola was very angry that he had wasted his best years. But a moment later, Lola opened another can of beer and began to drink it. Lola said that since he no longer has to work 10 jobs to pay off his debt to his uncle, he will live to the fullest in this new life. Lola was glad that he would now choose how to live this life. Lola also said that the path that all his dreams were about is a free life. Later, on the ship, Lola reasoned that freedom immediately comes to mind, as well as wealth comes first. Therefore, Lola decided to take back the 100,000 that he forgot to take, and wanted to buy himself a new phone. The bad guys were talking among themselves that they should quickly find that guy who risked doing whatever he wanted on their territory. Lola was upset that he arrived too late. Noticing the gun, the guy became nervous that everything was now becoming too complicated. The guy began to blame himself for drinking too much before leaving, and they could destroy him with one shot. Lola began to think to himself what he should do, and what he should come up with. Suddenly, he noticed feet approaching him. The girl asked him if he was okay. The girl also added that his heartbeat could be heard 3 kilometers away. The girl also said that she was just passing by and heard his heartbeat, so she decided to approach him. Lola replied that even if it beats quickly, this sound cannot be heard. The girl replied that she was very sensitive to unique types of heartbeats, and this was the first time she had encountered something so unusual. But the girl suddenly said that the heartbeat was more like a desire to beat someone. Lola asked himself when the girl would stop touching him. Meanwhile, the man said that these 3 people should be worth much more, and does he really think that the lower price suits him? He was told that the money scattered on the floor would be his payment. He also added that this is how much Jack could be sold for. Jack put his hand to the back of the guy's head. Jack destroyed the guy, and said that he really pissed him off. The girl said it looked like a gang, and asked if he was with them. Lola said no, and asked if he looked like a gangster. The girl assumed that he was a spy from another mafia, and the guy replied that this was not so, and asked her to duck down. The girl asked why he was here then, and Lola replied that he wanted to take something that belonged to him. The girl suggested that this was the same cash that the fat man was talking about, and Lola replied that everything was correct, and he earned it. He also added that this is a long story, and he just wants to quickly take what he has and run away. A moment later, Lola noticed that the bag had already been taken away. Lola also said that he now has his money, and he will definitely not give it back if he tries to take it away by force. The girl told him to let her think, and Lola asked her to hide behind the box. The girl thought about it and said that she would just help him with this. Suddenly the girl stood up from behind the box and asked the bespectacled man to give her the bag. Jack turned to look at them with a stern look. The girl also added that this guy said that the bag was his, and if you don't give them back kindly, then he'll be ruined. Jack got angry and rushed towards the guy and girl. The girl said that now it's his turn, and let him go deal with him. Jack attacked Wola and asked if he really wanted other people's money. Jack cut off Wola's hand with a knife. Wola started screaming from the pain he was carrying after his arm was cut off. Jack asked if he was the one who caused the chaos in the warehouse. Jack said that if he finishes him off, his mission will end. The girl said she thought the guy could do this job easily. Jack began to attack the girl, and she successfully dodged his blow. She hit Jack in the jaw with her foot. She struck again, but this time on Jack's stomach. Jack asked if she would be a police officer, and the girl replied that she could call her whatever she wanted. She also said that she just loves to destroy those who create noise. Suddenly, Wola stood up, which attracted the attention of Jack and the girl. Wola said that in fact, this girl is the noisiest here. The girl laughed because the guy had not yet died. Jack asked how this was possible, since he deliberately cut his throat. Wola asked, why start right away from the head, because he almost lost consciousness from the pain. Jack asked him how his legs were still standing. Wola replied that although he was used to it, it was already very annoying, that something was always being taken away from him due to a combination of many circumstances. The girl laughed and said they could continue. Wola said that he cut off his head a second ago, and now, it was his turn to destroy him. And even if Jack doesn't give up his bag, he will take it away on his own. Wola suddenly threw his hand towards Jack. The blow almost reached Jack's face, but he successfully dodged. But the hand didn't stop and continued to fly, and got caught on something. Wola began to fly towards his hand, and the girl joked that he was just like Superman. But Wola flew not empty-handed, but with a brick that was approaching Jack's face. A moment later, the brick smashed on Jack's head. Using his leg, Wola also dealt additional damage to Jack. Wola also managed to hook Jack onto himself, and he flew with him. Wola snatched the bag he wanted to take away, and Jack fell to the ground. He practically flew to his hand, and said that he could return this bag. Clinging to his arm, he hit his head on something. Wola fell along with Jack to the ground, from the wall. The girl laughed and said that the guy has very nice super skills. The girl sat and touched Wola's hair, and said that it was very cool. Suddenly the girl noticed how Jack began to rise from the ground. The girl asked him if he wanted to continue the fight. A huge knife began to appear instead of Jack's hand. Jack ran and tried to attack the girl. The girl laughed and said that his strength is so poor. A moment later, an explosion occurred among the pile of warehouses due to the girl's ability. After a while, the girl asked to clean up the order here. The girl also added that they should prepare a car for a trip with two bodies. She was asked why there were two bodies, and whether there would be anyone else besides Jack, and the girl replied that it was just a surprise, it fell out of the blue. The guy replied that he accepted, and is already sending a person to her. Later, Wola woke up, and saw some kind of ventilation, and white walls in front of him. Opening his eyes, he was perplexed by what was happening now. After standing up a little, Wola said that his head was pounding. Wola, in bewilderment, asked if he was locked here, and added that it seemed like he came to his uncle yesterday. Through the glass walls he noticed Jack with whom he was fighting. Wola also wondered what kind of place this was. Meanwhile, the girl was lying in a soft bed, and eating apples. But after a while, Wola's door rose. They handed him a box and Wola was surprised by it. The guy standing in front of him said he bought some takeout on the way back, and he could eat if he was hungry. Wola started asking where he was, and why they were at the police, and why he was put in some kind of cell. The guy replied that he shouldn't waste his energy yelling, "This glass is soundproof." He also added that the guy should eat, because this is his last lunch. Wola said, seeing his back, that police officers don't have such uniforms. Suddenly, Wola remembered hitting his head on the roof and losing consciousness. He also continued that he definitely remembers seeing people with logos like that guy's. Wola also remembered that the first time he saw this sign was that girl's pendant. Wola realized that the nonsense about the heartbeat was a lie, and he was so easily deceived. Meanwhile, the guy in the suit told someone that the higher-ups are asking them to write a report regarding last night's mission. The guy was told that they were so tired of how they were rushing things. Someone also continued to tell them that the report will be ready when the mood arises. She also added that she hates doing paperwork in the morning, and offered to write this report for her bilingually. She also asked how their prisoners were doing. She was told that they were locked in soundproofing rooms. The girl introduced herself that her name was Mo Jian Lan, and she was the captain of the Silent 08 Security Bureau squad. Loli got angry when he saw the girl and hit the glass. Mo Jian Lan asked for the soundproofing to be turned off. Wola started screaming to be let go because he did not break the law, and accused Mo Jian Lan of deceiving him by pretending to be an ordinary passerby. Wola continued that even if a couple of people died at his hands, it was only self-defense, because they threatened him. Mo Jian Lan replied that they are not in court or in the police, and it doesn't matter whether he violated something or not. Wola asked why, in that case, he was here. Mo Jian Lan replied that their task was to capture Echo. Mo Jian Lan explained that they call people who come back to life after death in Echo. Wola leaned back and asked how she knew about his resurrection. Mo Jian Lan replied that she had already said that she had sensitive hearing to heartbeats. She also continued that he himself demonstrated how he tears off his limbs and then reattaches them back. She was told that the preparation was over and they could begin, and Mo Jian Lan asked if they had to videotape everything. They explained to her that their hiring rate was too low, so management required every process to be recorded. Mo Jian Lan asked the guy's name, and he replied that his name was Wola. Mo Jian Lan said that as Echo, he was given the chance to live a second time, and asked if he would like to join the party and catch them together. Wola replied that there are still so many things in the world that are still unknown to him, and he does not want to waste time on them. Mo Jian Lan asked him what his decision would be. Wola replied that he refused, and only a day passed with the time of his new life, where he became truly free. He also continued that if they treated people normally, they might be able to recruit someone. Mo Jian Lan looked at him with a thoughtful face. She said everything was fine, and they moved on. She asked Jack if he would join their squad. But Jack showed with all his appearance that he did not want to answer. Mo Jian Lan said that hiring him was a mockery, and she was told that he got it from her. He could hardly answer if he wanted. Mo Jian Lan got angry and accused him of trying to put all the blame on her so that the video with Jack would be cut out. Mo Jian Lan said that since he is silent, they will assume that he is not interested in the deal, and in any case, she did not like his abilities. She asked her assistant to dispose of it. The assistant replied that he was listening and clicked on something. Suddenly, Jack tried to attack him. After the attack, Dean's cigarette suddenly smoked sharply. Dean began to suck Jack in with his air. After a few seconds, Jack began to dissolve. A pile of air continued to form around Dean. After the smoke cleared, only Jack's glasses lay on the floor. Dean said it's all done now, and it's now scrapped. Mo Jian Lan smiled and said that Wola is next. Wola suggested that they come to the meeting room. Mo Jian Lan refused and said that someone who died once would never be normal again. She continued that since he had become unusual and was not useful to them, then he would suffer the same fate as a guy. Wola began muttering to himself that if he refused, he would die right here. He also added that he doesn't care about new life and freedom. Now the main thing is to stay whole, and he's tired of dying. Unexpectedly, Wola responded to the proposal for cooperation, that he agreed. Wola said that in this way, on pain of death, he joined this strange organization. Some time later, Wola was asked to fill out a paper. Wola asked where his bag was, and whether it would be returned, and Mo Jianlan replied that the bag was at the bottom of the sea. He also asked if they even paid wages here, and he was told that they didn't. Wola said that he didn't have a penny for another, and asked what he should live on now. Mo Jianlan told him that they provide all employees with food until they die a second time. Wola asked about what to do after retiring without accumulating savings. And he also asked if this meant that he would be forced to work here until the end of his days. Mo Jianlan began to crawl on the table towards Wola. She leaned against him and said that his life ended yesterday and that he should continue to write because there is still a lot of work to do. Some time later, the weather was clear outside. Wola thought to himself that she seemed cute. But in fact, just a crazy woman who escaped from a madhouse. Wola also thought to himself that he should think of a way to escape from here. Dean said that often those who become echoes die under very unusual circumstances. Wola supported the dialogue that he was actually dismembered alive. Dean asked if he could detach his limbs. Wola asked Dean how he knew. Dean explained that after being resurrected, Echo undergoes a change in her body, and it depends on how the person died. Wola said that even if something has changed, it still hurts to tear them off. But Wola also added that it is unlikely that death could be so painful. Wola asked what happened to Ding. Dean lit a cigarette and said he'll tell you when the time comes. The car stopped and Dean said that they were there, and his target was nearby, and added that the guy would find it himself. Wola asked if he would go with him, and Ding replied that he needed to find a place to park the car. Dim also added that the captain personally assigned him to this mission, and Dean only acts as an observer. Wola started shouting that the jokes are over, and he doesn't understand anything. Ding said that he may not have a salary now, but if he completes the task, he will receive payments of 5,000 yuan per month in the future. Dean also added that he taught him how to look for Echo before they left. After leaving, Dean said that the guy should put on a noise detector and get started. Wola said that as long as they give money, then you can postpone your escape plan. Wola put on the headphones that Dean gave him. Wola moved to another reality, and something beeped at him. Realizing that the squeaking was his indicator, Wola began to move in the right direction. Meanwhile, Captain No was informed that all information about the new arrival had already been fully collected. Jia also added that she also needs his photo to create a personal ID. Mo Jianlan said that he was on a mission now, and they would wait for him to return, and Jia asked if it was too early to give him a task. Mo Jianlan explained to her that they had a shortage of workers, so they decided to immediately send a newcomer on a mission. The girl said that they haven't really taught him anything yet, and now she's starting to worry, and Mo Jianlan replied that there's a couple of trifles in Zone 10. She also added that this is the same order for 20 decibels. Jia said the data was wrong, and they updated it an hour ago. And since neither the first nor the second team could cope with it, they re-estimated the difficulty. Wola said that 5,000 yen will soon be his. Mo Jianlan screamed like 200 dB, and Jia asked if he went there alone. Mo Jianlan said that Ding is also with him. Jia said that since Ding is with him, then everything should go well. Meanwhile, the plan remembered how she told Dean to take him there for the rest of the day, and Dean could rest. At the same time, Wola was already standing near the door, because of which his earphone was beeping. Wola said that he ran around the entire building, and only this apartment remained. He thought to himself, wouldn't it be weird if he just knocked? He also added that he doesn't know anything else, he needs to come up with some kind of story. Wola began to rehearse various plots, but they were all crazy, and did not suit him. Suddenly, the apartment door began to open. The guy looked at Wola, and asked if it was delivery. Meanwhile, Dean said to himself that he would be fine if the mission was at 20 decibels. Wola's earphone kept beeping, louder, and louder. Wola suddenly shouted that it was too loud. He threw his headphones out of his ears, and they fell to the floor. The guy asked if he was from the mute organization, and Lola replied that everything was correct. The guy added that they sent a new one faster than he expected. The guy allowed me to enter his apartment. After a while, Wola was already sitting on the sofa, and he was told to make himself at home. Wola was surprised that in his opinion, it was a wonderful place. He also said to himself that it must be very cool to live here. Compared to their slums, the guy thought this was paradise. The guy said that this apartment cost him his life. He also added that in order to pay off the mortgage, he had to give his life. The guy introduced himself as Kunjin Kao, and works as a programmer, and 2 months ago he died of a heart attack, which resulted from working overtime. Kao said that he knows about the mutes and the reason why the guy came here, so he will not resist. Kao added that it is clear to him that he is someone who no longer exists in the world. Wola was happy that since Kao agreed, they would go right now, and thought to himself that this was an easy 5,000 yuan. But Kao interrupted the guy, and said that he had a small request. Kao asked the Wola if he could devote time to his latest project. Kao added that he wrote this code long before his death, and continues to refine it to this day, and wants to finish the code today. Wola asked how long it would take them to do this. Kao replied that it was just a little bit, but if there were things he needed to do, he could come back, and wait for him there. Wola thought to himself that using the excuse that it was too early for him to do such missions, and leaving the company, would be the ideal plan. He remembered No Land's words, that someone who died once would never become normal again, and since he was no longer useful to them, then they would have to get rid of him. Wola said that if he came back with nothing, they would not count his mission, and in the end he would only lose 5,000 yuan, but also his head. Kao stood up and said that he knew that now he would sound very tactless. Kao started begging for the guy to help him, and he is very important to him. Kao continued that he devoted all his days to work, renouncing happiness and rest, no matter whether it was night, illness or his death. Kao hoped that the guy would now understand why he wanted to complete the project so much. Wola replied that if necessary, he could just sit here with him until he finishes the code. Later, Wola thought to himself that even while working 10 part-time jobs, at the same time, he always had time to rest. But Kao was never given the opportunity to come for a second or step back. Does this mean that his routine is worse than Wola's? Wola also thought that the company has no restrictions on the number of orders, so as soon as he finishes, he will take his money and leave. He also asked himself whether it was really that difficult to find parking for a car. Meanwhile, Dean was sitting in the theater watching a movie, thinking it was a great day off. Kao said that he completely forgot to ask what his name was. Wola introduced himself, and the guy thanked him. Kao also asked the Wola to state his weight, height, age and other things. Wola asked why he needed all this. Kao replied that it was just curiosity, and it would simply be better to set the correct settings. Kao continued that we were talking about a character, and asked how it could function in code, without the correct parameters. Unexpectedly, Wola attacked the guy, and asked what he was up to. Kao pressed enter, and instead of Kao's hair, Wola's hand hit the pixels. Because there was no one in front of him, Wola began to fall. Wola fell, and hit his head on the floor. Wola stood up, and asked where that guy disappeared to. Kao said that since he cannot be brought back, he will only complicate the game so that it is impossible to beat it. Kao greeted the Wola in his room of deception. Wola began to pound the floor intensely out of anger. He asked if there was nothing here, then why couldn't he leave? Kao replied that any of his attempts to get out were useless, because there was an air wall there, and it was impossible to break through it. He also asked if he didn't even have basic knowledge of video games. Wola replied that he had never even played a video game for a minute before. He also said that there were enough games for the programmer to release it. Kao said that Wola really does not understand his situation, and added that after entering there, no one will return to reality. Wola shouted that he didn't do anything wrong, and asked why they locked him up here. Kao reminded the guy that his task was to capture him, and deliver him to the mutes. Wola said that he had forgotten it. But Lola suddenly recalled that Cow said that he would go after completing the code. The programmer replied that he was just lying and called Lola a naive fool. Lola said that he felt very sorry for him back then, but he would not hold back any longer, and would definitely complete the mission. Cow replied that it would be better if Lola first thought about how to get out of here. He also added that since Lola wants to play so much, then he will try to make this game as memorable as possible. And the programmer also added that Lola will help test it. A moment later, a monster was already standing behind Lola. From behind, he swung his hand to hit Lola. The enemy threw Lola as far as possible with his blow. Also, Lola lost one of his 3 health. Cal remembered, and said, that if a guy dies in the game, then in life too. He also added that 2 of the mute's minions have already died in this game. The programmer also hoped that Lola would not disappoint him. Meanwhile, Lola said that the pain in the game is the same as in reality. Suddenly the monster attacked Lola again. Cal reminded that one more blow from the enemy, and the end will come. Lola shouted that this monster is some kind of monster. He also said that the monster is too strong, and there is no way for him to get out. He also reminded himself that there was just a chance to live again. Lola said that he is not going to lose this chance today. He tried to reassure himself that there was always a solution to any situation. The monster has already opened its mouth to deliver the final blow. Suddenly, Lola's attention was attracted by a set of kitchen knives. The monster closed its mouth, thereby destroying Lola. The programmer said it was very boring. He also added that this guy is just like those fools who came the first time. He also added that he may need to make adjustments. Unexpectedly, Cow was surprised, because all 3 lives were on the screen. As it turned out, with the help of a kitchen knife, Lola was able to divide his body, which saved his life. Lola was able to cut off one of the monster's arms using a kitchen knife. But with the help of his second hand, the monster managed to attack Lola again. Because of the monster's blow, he fell straight into the wall. Lying against the wall, Lola was also without an arm, and sighed heavily. The programmer praised his creation that it was perfect. Lola began to rise to his feet, to fight the monster. He also said that it's just a bunch of pixels molded into a monster, and asked what's cool about that. Lola got up, and ran towards the monster, even without one hand. Cow said that he is passionate about his work, and he would have the courage to give up all things, and things in the world for her sake, even if it's his own life. The programmer continued that suddenly he fell, almost losing consciousness, but seeing the unfinished code, one thought hit his head. By some miracle he managed to hear. Even to this day, he does not understand what the reason is. And after that, he discovered that he had received a new power to imprison people in virtual reality. It became clear to him that God had given him a second chance to complete his destiny. So his work continued at full speed. Step by step his ideals were realized. And after many tests, eternal upgrades and updates, Cow thought he had created the perfect monster. But overnight, all the efforts of other years of trial and error were completely destroyed by some child. The programmer's face changed to crazy and he said that this is all very interesting. Meanwhile, Lola was monologuing and realized that this was similar to the games his classmate was obsessed with. And he wanted to know how much fun it was to play them. He also said that he was unlikely to be able to escape in the usual way. And since games are just programs, is there a way to affect his laptop? The programmer said that it seems that one monster is not enough to destroy the guy. Cow suggested adding another monster to himself. He also added that such an opportunity does not always arise, and this should not be lost. The programmer said that he will now increase the speed of respawning mobs until they kill him. And Cow has now decided to add another 3D mode to the game. The programmer asked him to enjoy the guy's suffering enough. The download was completed and another monster landed in the room where Lola was. As it turned out, the monster was not alone due to the programmer's idea. Lola couldn't even count the number of monsters, and stood in a stupor. Decidedly and unexpectedly, Lola told them to stop. And he also added that he doesn't care about the number, and he will simply destroy everyone. Wola also said that it was his first time playing computer games, and at least now, he had the chance to enjoy them. Suddenly a monster attacked from behind the guy. But in any case, Wola is full of determination and rage within himself. He closed his eyes to prepare himself, and pointed the back of the knife in front of him. Opening his eyes, Wola accurately hit the monster with his knife. Suddenly, after Wola's blow, only blood remained from the monster. Without allowing him to rest, Wola was attacked by another monster of the same type. But with a precise blow from the blade, Wola managed to destroy another monster. Wola continued to stand surrounded by pools of blood around him. He thought to himself that the movement of the new monsters was much slower than that of the first. But suddenly Wola suggested that he was just imagining. Without thinking twice, Wola rushed into the crowd of monsters that were eager to destroy him. A few seconds later, he was behind the furniture fighting monsters. But from there, only blood came from the battle with monsters. The furniture fell and Wola was just wiping off the blood of the monsters. Wola realized that the more monsters there are, the slower they move. He asked why the scarecrow stood rooted to the spot. The programmer replied that due to the fact that only a limited number of monsters can be loaded onto the training ground, the laptop began to freeze. Looking at the loading cow, so that everything loads faster. Unexpectedly, Wola looked at the neck of the monsters in thought. He said that he's had enough of dilapidated toys, and as soon as he comes out, he'll get a bunch of blows to the face. Cow said that even if the monsters are immobilized now, he still cannot escape. And he also added that Wola would simply die, in agony, from his ideal creatures. The monster tried to attack the guy, but he successfully dodged. Another monster also tried to attack Wola from behind. But Wola dodged his blow further to the side. The programmer asked why the guy doesn't attack them, but only evades. The programmer suggested that the guy hopes to use the constant respawn mechanism and disable his laptop. Cow asked if the guy seriously thought that such tactics would help him. He also added that the guy is a very annoying puppy. Wola was surprised that there was a whole crowd of them, but the computer still hadn't died. The programmer thanked him for stalling for time with an insignificant plan. And it's enough to simply replace the team when a critical error approaches, because this space is completely under his control. Wola asked that, in this case, the programmer look carefully. Cutting himself into pieces, he added that this world is about to fall. He also suggested that his box of bolts was already going crazy. The programmer replied that this was useless, because the laptop would not fall apart just from two pieces. Wola said that then he will add as much as needed. He just chops his hand into pieces, and counts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Cow asked the guy to stop, and asked if he was in pain. Pressing enter, the programmer once again asked the guy to stop. Wola replied that it doesn't matter to him whether it hurts him or not. Wola sat on the floor writhing in pain around the monsters. Suddenly, everything cracked into small pieces. In a moment, everything collapsed, except for Wola, who was sitting in the center. With his cold gaze he saw the frightened face of the programmer. And Wola said that now he has returned to him. Meanwhile, Dean said on the phone that he went to the cinema, and next time he will remove the vibration and make a normal ringtone. He added that if she continues to behave recklessly, then such actions will make no one able to cope with work. Mo Jianlan replied that successful recruitment is not an easy job, and asked to bring the guy back. Dean asked if he suddenly died, and Mo Lan replied that she called him 20 times, and asked him to bring his corpse. Dean replied that he would report on the details later, and said goodbye to her. Dean said that they separated here quite a long time ago, and he has no idea whether the guy is still alive or not. He also said that he was considering using a mixed type of cigarette, or regular dried tobacco leaf. He also suggested that the enemy is most likely very strong, because it is 200 decibels. Meanwhile, Wola told the programmer that he should not twitch. Cow begged for mercy, and agreed to go with the guy. But Awola didn't believe it. He continued that the programmer received the amount of times he was hit by monsters, and also for having to cut his own hands. Kao said that it was according to the desire and will of Awola. Wola asked the programmer not to lie, and quickly crawled back. Dean asked if he was able to get out alone. Wola, yes. Dean continued that it doesn't sound real, but they'll just forget it. Dean added that after resurrection, physical and athletic skills improve, but however, the battle with this boy was a surprise. Dean threw something into Wola's hands, and he asked what it was. Dean explained that this was the final stage of his mission. Dean said to use the icon to pick up other people's pulses and sound waves, using reverb. He continued that each echo has its own sound, and this can be considered a kind of identity card or ID. And after entering certain data, they can track any movement of targets if they thought of hiding, and that's how they managed to find Jack. They also added that they also recorded his reverberation, and so that Wola would not think of running away. Wola replied that even if he suddenly decides to leave them, then first they must give him his salary, and then he will look further. Wola also said that everything is fine, and his mission is over. Dean asked if they would just leave him alone with this lying. Wola replied that the fight had exhausted him, and asked Dina to finish the rest. He also asked where Dean had been all this time. Leaving the apartment, Wola was very surprised by something. As it turned out, he made eye contact with his classmate. Wola told the headman that they had not seen each other for a long time. The head girl asked if he really forgot everything last night and went to do something important. Wola remembered that today was Saturday, and he was at school at that time on Friday. He also added that only one day has passed, but due to several events it seems as if a whole month has been lost from life. The headman suddenly asked why he was here, because she remembered for sure that his apartment was in a different area. Wola replied that he was somewhere around here, so he had to get here for part-time work. The headman asked him to have Wola hold a preventive conversation with him, because this neighbor has been making a lot of noise lately. She said goodbye and finally said that they would see each other on Monday. Wola also said goodbye to his headman. Unexpectedly, Ding came over and said that Wola is a fierce kid, because that guy is all swollen, especially his ass. Wola replied that in order to say such a thing, he would first have to find out what kind of game he had decided to play. Dean said it was like they ran over the body there like a tank. Wola replied that Dean should have joined earlier so that he would not bother with him for so long. Suddenly, the door slammed shut and Dean asked who the girl was and Wola replied that she was his classmate. The headwoman was shaking with fear and suggested that these were daily part-time jobs. She also added that she understood what Wola was doing. Wola asked if he could show up at school, actually. Suddenly, the clock began to spin faster and faster. The arrow rotated so quickly that it turned into a spiral. Someone started to get out of this spiral. With his hand that held the hat, he broke through the barrier that prevented him from getting out. He got out of the clock, and in his hat looked at the city at night. The guy said that 72 hours would be enough for him. A while later, Dean showed the main building of the headquarters of the Mute organization, and their departments of their squads are located from the 20th to 23rd floor. Wola asked, did all of the organization's cadres die at some point, and Ding replied that most of them were ordinary people. In fact, in some teams there are people like them, and the process of bringing echoes into the fighting ranks began just a couple of years ago. And although it will take a lot of time to enter the completed assignment into the archive, Ding will still introduce Wola to the local situation. He explained that this is a reporting bureau in case if you suddenly need to leave a request to go somewhere, for example, outside the city. Wola asked later if he shouldn't just leave, and Dean replied that everything was right. Dean also pointed out the canteen, which provides a wide range of food and dishes, and is free for employees. Wola mainly if there is beer, and Ding replied that he does not advise developing alcohol while working. And also Kim showed a place where you can select a task, and the echoes of all the areas are displayed on the screen. Dean explained that this is half the country. including some areas of neighboring lands. Wola said that it turns out that every second person becomes unusual, every day. Ding said that their squad should only be taken above 150 decibels, and Wola asked if he meant decibels. Explained that lethal pressure is a value related to the degree of harm of any echo, and the higher its value, the greater the threat to society. Day asked him to master only one thing: there is nothing wrong with decibels, because they are just sounds. Wola said that the signals are above 150, which means we can take a break. Wola added that looking at the flow of events like this, things don't seem so bad now. Wola added that the past enemy was not very difficult, and someone's hand reached out to him. Mo Lang hugged him, and said that she was not mistaken when she thought that he would cope with the task on his own. Wola was indignant that he was not given bonuses from missions, and Mo Lan replied that he was not a laborer to be paid a daily salary. Wola asked when the money would be given back, and Mo Lan replied that only at the end of the year. Wola began to be even more indignant that he had never seen such terms for the payment of salaries. Mo Lan replied that these are the rules of the organization, and their work does not last longer than this period. This is a kind of cost saving. She also added that he should work hard to survive until next year. Mo Lan also laughed at his expression, and wanted to take a selfie with him. Later, it was already the next Monday morning. Wola's feet landed on the ground from a height. A moment later, Wola was already rushing to his feet. He winced in pain, and said that it hurt. Wola said that although he was trapped at a great height, he learned how to descend quickly. And he wondered if he left, would they send people after him? Wola added that he had to go to school, and then quickly come back. And he also thought that there was nothing wrong with this, but someone's head appeared in front of him. As it turned out, Mo Lan also fell from a height, just like Wola. She landed and Wola was a little scared. A small stone got stuck on her forehead, causing her to bleed. The captain apparently just woke up, and has been stretching since the morning. Wola asked if she also decided to jump out of the headquarters, and Mo Lan replied that she decided to jump from the roof to cheer herself up. Wola asked if it's okay to head upside down, and Mo Lan replied that flying is a very good way to have fun. Wola suggested that she became an echo because she fell from a great height, and Mo Lan replied that no one wants such a boring death. Wola thought to himself that it means that the last of her brains were knocked off when she fell. Mo Lan continued that there was one echo who fell to her death from a jump. And she used to be a member of her department, and later she will introduce them. After all, they are the same age. Wola replied that he did not want to, and thought to himself that no one in their right mind would want to be friends with eccentrics. Mo Lan suddenly asked, why does the guy walk around wherever he wants without sending a report? Wola replied that he just wanted to go to school for classes. He continued that falling in love, working, having fun, and the desire to try such things never leave his mind. Wola added that this has become his life's aspiration and goal. Mo Lan wanted to clarify whether Wola was 17 years old now, and he replied that everything was correct. Mo Lan said that this is the age that does not listen to advice and persuasion, and no matter how much they persuade, no matter what the outcome, he will be stubborn. Mo Lan added that in this case, they will go together. Wola asked where they would go. And without thinking she answered him that they would go to school naturally. As it turns out, Wola got a ride from school, and the guy said he had to go. Mo Lan asked Wola to take care of himself and not create problems. Dean said that according to their code, Echo is not allowed to contact anyone he knows. Mo Lan answered for Dean to look, because the documents already had stamps, and this was his last day here. Dean said that she could have sent another person here for this task. Dean asked if she cared about him because of that 200 decibel challenge. The captain replied that she was only interested in his heartbeat. She added that it is unique to each echo, and for sure Wola can completely complement and complete the melody she wrote earlier. Dean said she was talking about her reverb theory of music again. He also continued that it had been quite a while since he last heard that song of hers. Suddenly, Molan snatched the cigarette from Dean's hands and threw it away. She added that smoking is prohibited on school grounds, and even she, who has not attended school for more than 800 years, is familiar with this rule. Meanwhile, Wola was surprised that the captain agreed to continue his studies. He said that if he puts on a smile, no one will suspect anything, or think strange. Wola continued that he doesn't want to worry so much. After all, as long as they allow him to return to normal life, he is quite happy. Wola entered his class, but found no one there. As it turned out, the first lesson was physical education, but Wola didn't remember that physical education class was on Mondays. Ding was told that there were no students named Wola in the establishment, and they could come back later to make sure. Molan said that her ears began to buzz as soon as they entered here. She suggested that he deliberately went to the wrong school to deceive them. Dean replied that this was unlikely, because the boy was really beaming with joy as he rushed to class. Dean replied that this was unlikely, because the boy was really beaming with joy as he rushed to class. Molan said that it was 2022, and therefore the 17th year students should have already graduated. She added that there was no reason for a transcript from 5 years ago to be hanging here. She asked if this meant a period of time. Molan began to listen closely, and sounds came into her ear. She heard something happening upstairs. We were shown how a guy was sitting in front of some girl, whose mouth was taped shut. Meanwhile, Wola said that he doesn't understand anything, because this is clearly not his class. He added that he felt as if the building had been completely renovated and restored over the weekend. For Wola, this place looked completely unfamiliar. A moment later, some guy fell and landed on the ground. Seeing the body on the ground, Wola asked what happened, and also asked if this guy was one of the school students. Wola looked up and continued that the guy fell from the upper floors. From the roof of the building, someone was looking at Wola, who was looking out of the window. But from Wola's perspective, it was a green-haired girl with black eyes and yellow pupils. Meanwhile, Dean said that there is something wrong with the schedule, because it does not correspond to reality. Molan reinforced the idea that the signal was also blocked, and therefore there was no news from the headquarters. She also added that the enemy is well aware of their reality. Dean was impressed by the abilities based on changing the flow of time, and he did not rule out the possibility that they were trapped in hallucinations. Molan told Dean not to worry, because she would find him and interrogate him to find out everything. She asked Dean to check on Wola, because it was too dangerous to leave him alone. Molan said that she would like games to make her younger over time. Suddenly something caught her attention. She saw a student from the 3rd school of the 7th group, Push-In, who was in 2nd grade in 2019. Meanwhile, Wola said that he remembers exactly how that guy fell here. He also asked what happened, and did he really imagine everything? But Wola couldn't believe that the guy had disappeared, because he saw his flight with his own eyes. He added that even then he noticed a girl standing on the roof. Wola continued that the strangeness comes one after another, and the feeling is as if the brain is about to explode. Director Wu asked Wola what class the guy was from, and why he was playing truant. Wola thought to himself, why does he have hair? But now the point is different. Wola said that the director came at the right time. Wola shouted that one of his classmates had just fallen from the roof of a building. The director asked where his classmate fell. Wola pointed his finger at the place where he fell, and said that when he came down, there was no one there. The director grabbed Wola and asked the guy to stop laughing at him. Wola continued that there was a suspicious girl on the roof, but the director no longer believed him. The director also added that only the hooligan was visible outside, wandering around with nothing to do. Unexpectedly, Wola stared at something with his eyes. Push-In raised her hand to strike, and Wola told the director to save himself. The girl threw the director away with one kick. Wola also fell along with the director after being hit by Push-In. From the pain that was inflicted on him, Wola bit his lip. He was worried about the director's well-being and continued to be near him. He said that the director's body was dissolving and asked that the same thing really happened, to that schoolboy. Wola asked the schoolgirl why she was doing this. A moment later he found out that it was the same girl, who was standing on the roof. She said that after the Renaissance, now everyone will die. Wola suggested that this schoolgirl is also an echo like him. Without further ado, Bushin ran to attack towards Wola. She said she wants to destroy and trample all people. Bushin jumped over Wola to attack with her legs. Wola was shocked by how high her jump was. Bushin almost hit Wola's head with her blow. But he was saved from the blow by Dean, who suddenly appeared and grabbed the girl by the leg. Wola asked why Ding Guling was here. Dean replied that he just wanted to pick up the guy from school. Suddenly the ground beneath them began to break rapidly. Ding grabbed Wola and shouted that they now need to run away. Wola said that she has eerie abilities, and she really is an echo. Ding asked the king what she was doing here, and why she was not abroad, and she replied to it. Dean said there were only half of the cigarettes left, and he had no idea if there would be enough. He also asked the Wola to hide while he fought with her. Ding explained to Wola that this was the vice commander of their team. Wola asked how, after all, she is a simple schoolgirl. Dean replied that even though she looks like a fragile student, but in fact, this girl has terrifying power. Wola asked how this schoolgirl is so fast. Dean started blowing out all the smoke from the cigarette. In a moment, everything was engulfed in fog around Wu King. Dean moved rapidly in the smoke zone he created. Wu King noticed him, and even after the attack, Dean blocked her blow. Dean said it's all weird, even her dynamic. Wu King shouted for Dean to quickly die at her hands. She attacked him and Dean said that even though she tells him to die, she doesn't fight at full strength. Wola said that he sees the air currents created by the swinging of the fists, due to which the intensity of the attacks increases. It was surprising for him, because there was a great difference between their skills, despite the fact that they were from the same school, and were peers to each other. Wu King tried to grab Dean's head. She also tried throwing punches with her leg. And she was able to successfully carry out an attack on Dean's head. Dean told her it looked like she had a great time in America. He added that she had made a sharp progression back. And even if she's not happy to meet him, it's better to let her tell about the devilry going on here, before it's too late. Unexpectedly, Wola began to understand the strange things that happened in this school, about the seats in the office, and about the headmaster's hair. He also suggested that even school, which was all he was thinking about, was her fault. Wola said that he was tired of this pile of revolted corpses. He added that they should stop ruining his new life. From behind, the guy attacked the schoolgirl and shouted for her to disappear. Dean said now is the worst time. Wu Qing's hands began to glow blue, and began to shake. With her kick, the schoolgirl threw Dean to hell. Dean realized he screwed up because he forgot to warn him. He continued, if Wu Qing suddenly jumped, and if he manages to catch Wola, something important will happen. Wu Qing will be able to fly to the very skies, with the help of the Wola. Wu King also grabbed and pulled the Wola along. A moment later, they flew together into the wall of the building. Ding said that now there will be a more difficult task, and if Wu Qing hovers in the sky and continues to use his abilities, then he will be absolutely powerless until he finds cigarettes. Dean grabbed the window and started flying into it with his feet. Jumping into the building, Dean said that he needed to find cigarettes somewhere quickly. He continued that there is only a school here, but where to go, he has no idea. Suddenly, Dean's attention was attracted by school children who were smoking cigarettes in the toilet. Meanwhile, Wola begged the lady not to let go of his comma, and apologized for attacking them. He also suggested that they talk about this on Earth, and after falling from here he definitely would not survive. But only with complete composure did the girl wish the guy death. Wu Qing released the Wola from her hands to destroy him. Wola grabbed her hand and said that he didn't want to die anymore. By pure chance, Wola lowered her sleeve and exposed the girl a little. He said that he should not have relaxed his hand, so there was no need to throw accusations in her direction, and apologized for accidentally taking off her clothes. Puchin remembered how the boys humiliated her, saying that she was just a member of the student council. The guy said that she walks around with a disgusting face every day and treats him with contempt. Puchin asked them to stop taking off her clothes. The guy said that he was simply tormented by curiosity to find out how pure and innocent their excellent student was. The girl begged him to stop touching her. The guy told her to tell Uchin to stop being modest. In the present, Lola kept apologizing that he really didn't intentionally. Uchin hit Lola's face with her fist. Throwing it back, the schoolgirl said that he did it on purpose. Lola asked why this girl has fists like iron. Lola started screaming for help, stretching his hand forward. Lola's hand began to peel off from his body. Without even realizing it, he ran his hand to save his life. The hand grabbed the edge of the roof, thereby saving the guy. Meanwhile, Lola was almost at the very base of the asphalt. Lola asked how his hand detached by itself. Lola asked how his hand detached by itself. But Haochin's rage did not end, and she wanted revenge on Lola. Lola asked if she could sit down somewhere and just relax for a minute. Meanwhile, the students in the class were asking about the terrible noise that sounded like an explosion. A few seconds later, shards of glass from the windows flew towards the students. Everyone at school panicked and said that it was an earthquake, and asked everyone to run away quickly. Puchin went up to Lola's roof without stopping her anger. Lola said that there was nowhere to retreat anyway, and proposed to arrange a fair fight between two dead men. Lola launched his attack and sent his hands towards Puchin. But the girl easily dodged the guy's flying fists. Lola asked what about this technique, and waved his severed hand. From behind the back, hands tried to attack the schoolgirl. Puchin dodged and the hands returned to the owner. Suddenly, Lola's arms became very heavy, and he asked why his arms began to weigh half a ton. He added, as if it had been poured into concrete, and could not be lifted. He also assumed it was because she touched his hands. Lola added that this is how her attacks begin, with touching with her hands, and for some reason she always needed to touch her legs. Lola continued that if such attacks hit him, but he was interrupted by a schoolgirl who attacked him. Lola dodged the blow by rolling to the side. Puchin leaned her feet away from the railing, so that it broke. She was already hanging in the air, and grabbed the railing that she had broken. Puchin threw the railing towards the guy to destroy him. From the surprise and speed of the attack, Lola stood in the mortar, and did not know what to do. The railing cut off his head, but Lola did not die. Lola said that these seemed to be ordinary iron bars, but they left behind terrible destruction. He assumed that there was something wrong with her hands, and most likely that it was a skill obtained as a result of resurrection. Lola came to the conclusion that it was better not to touch the girl. He also added that if his guesses are correct, he now knows how to deal with her. Lola sent his head into battle with a schoolgirl. He also said that now she can experience his own fighting style. Puchin wanted to touch Lola's head and end the battle. But unexpectedly, Lola used the division of his body. Using head separation, he went behind the girl's back. While bandaging it, Lola said that the first one is now ready. Lola began to magnetize his body to the head that was divided. Grabbing her, he said that now he went second, and Puchin asked to let her go. Lola replied that he did not want to be touched, and he could not even imagine that his first hug with a girl would happen in such a situation. Puchin said that she would simply destroy the guy, and leaned back. Lola asked if the girl could fly. Meanwhile, the students ran in panic, saying that the building was collapsing. Meanwhile, the hat guy said that the students were making a huge fuss. He also suggested that Puchin had managed to meet people from the dumb. And he added that he specially turned this school into a playground so that the little girl could stretch her body and arms. Well, now that stronger rivals have appeared on the horizon, he no longer needs his dolls. With his hand, he stopped the flow of panic. Now the school students looked like zombies in stop time. He wondered if they would be angry when they found out the truth about Puchin. He also added that he was already burning with impatience to find out. Molen said that she was now also curious. The Hatter said that a cute little mouse invited him to visit, and the ending of the story remains a curtain. He continued that what an intriguing scene, and Molan replied that he was talking complete nonsense. She added that the next time she decides to make sinister plans, let him find a more comfortable place. The Hatter said that unexpectedly she was also a beauty, and greeted the lady. He added that he sees that she is not afraid at all, and feels great. Molan broke the clock hand to stand on it. Molan said that she loves to destroy people like him. The Hatter replied that after joining the mutes, everyone becomes vulgar. Molan asked him to say something in human language. The Hatter said that it was completely unethical for her to constantly threaten people with violence and beatings. Molan, what doesn't concern him at all is manners and decency. She thought to herself that his movements had slowed down now, so he wasn't running or jumping. The Hatter told her to calm down and get some rest. Molan tried to attack the Hatter with her fist, but he dodged. To himself, the Hatter wondered if she could break the time delay. Molan began to slowly say that the ring was still on her. She added that she had great difficulty controlling her speech rate, and would like to ask two questions. The Hatter thought to himself that the girl had adapted to the slowdown of time, by simply speeding herself up a little. Suddenly the Hatter got tired and wondered how this girl died. The Hatter said that he would not linger because of impudent girls, and the Modo answered him that he still had not answered her questions. The Hatter apologized and wished him all the best for his farewell. Molan said that no one had ever managed to escape from under her nose. Molan caught him, and the Hatter said that it was rude of him to underestimate her, but he is connected to this chapel. The Hatter asked the girl to look down. He added that that group of students was stopped by his skill, and if he was forcibly pulled out of here, the building would collapse. So the Hatter said that he would crush everyone on Earth to death, and Molan answered him that he attacked the wrong person to threaten. Molan added that she absolutely doesn't care whether they die or not. She threw him out of the chapel and told him to get out. A moment later, the chapel cracked and exploded into pieces. The Hatter praised her for being so fearless. He also added that she is more ruthless than all the echoes combined. Molan asked if she could ask her questions now. The Hatter warned that he never makes bad deals, so if she wants to know anything, then she needs to tell about her death. Molan said that in this case, he should only tell the truth, and asked if the guy could make her younger. The Hatter replied that youth is one of the most important things in life for women. But unfortunately, it's not possible to rejuvenate someone like her. Molan said that now that he knows about this, the second thing will not be possible to ask. She asked for time to think, to find out such a thing. Suddenly, a strong explosion rocked the school building. As it turned out, it was Uchin with Lola hugging her. Unexpectedly, Molan asked the Hatter if the real Uchin was dead,